Italian Premier Giorgia Meloni has said Rome's support of Kyiv is in her country's national interest. Ukraine says almost all the 67 drones launched by Russia overnight have been destroyed. NYC News has more. Russian shelling killed 5 people in Donetsk region in eastern Ukraine on Saturday, officials said. 3 people were killed and 4 injured in the town of Kostiantynivka, Donetsk region Governor Vadim Filashkin said. 2 men in their 50s were reported killed in shelling near the town of Toretsk, about 20 kilometers, 12 miles, to the southeast. Filashkin said in a post on Telegram channel that 3 men aged between 24 and 69 were killed and a multi-story block, administrative building and a shop were in the attack on Kostiantynivka. Kostiantynivka, which before the war was an industrial town of around 70,000 people, has seen many of its residents leave as the front line has moved closer through the 30-month Russian invasion. Ukraine has warned of serious consequences between Kyiv and Tehran should Iran be found to be delivering ballistic missiles to Russia, the Wall Street Journal reported. The Associated Press news agency reported that the U.S. has informed allies that it believes Iran has transferred short-range ballistic missiles to Russia, citing 2 people familiar with the matter. Ukraine has long accused Iran of supporting Moscow's fight in Ukraine, in particular by providing Shade drones. Kyiv said deepening cooperation between Iran and Russia threatens the security of Ukraine, Europe, the Middle East, and the rest of the world. Iran considers the supply of military aid to warring parties to be inhumane and will therefore not take any action in this regard, Tehran's ambassador to the UN said. Richard Moore, the chief of MI6, said Kyiv's surprise August offensive to seize territory in Russia's Kursk region was typically audacious and bold on the part of the Ukrainians to try and change the game. He said the offensive, which Ukraine said has captured about 1,300 square kilometers, 500 square miles of Russian territory, had brought the war home to ordinary Russians. Funeral services were held for victims of one of the deadliest Russian airstrikes since the war in Ukraine began. The funerals took place in the eastern Ukrainian city of Poltava for the victims of a Russian missile attack on a military training facility that left over 50 dead and more than 300 injured. Hundreds of mourners, including grieving families, local residents, and officials, gathered at the Cathedral of the Assumption in the city, some 350 kilometers, 200 miles, southeast of Kyiv, for the solemn ceremony. Sobbing relatives, many holding red carnations, stood over caskets placed outside the church, draped in yellow and blue Ukrainian flags. An air raid siren sounded during the service. Local residents knelt in silent tribute as hearses carrying the victims passed by on their way to a military cemetery outside the city for burial. German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock, on Saturday, slammed a state premier from Chancellor Olaf Scholz's Social Democrats, SPD, for seeming to water down the party's support for arms deliveries to Ukraine ahead of regional elections. Baerbock said she had always relied on Brandenburg Premier Dietmar Woik to continue supporting Ukraine and was dismayed to see that a pre-election aide for voters, the Wallo Mat, listed the regional SPD chapter's position on continued arms deliveries to Kyiv as neutral. The exact statement in the document was, Brandenburg should work to ensure that Germany continues to supply arms to Ukraine. 2 of the parties taking part in the September 22 elections, the Alternative for Germany, AfD, and the Sarah Wagenknecht Alliance, Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht, actively opposed delivering weapons to Ukraine to help it defend itself against Russia's war of aggression. Baerbock criticized their attitude, saying that instead of helping Ukrainians, they stood on the side of Russia and its president, Vladimir Putin. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has underscored her country's support for Kyiv after meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on the sidelines of a business conference in the northern Italian city of Cernobbio. The choice of supporting Ukraine has been first and foremost a choice of national interest, and it's a choice that won't change, Meloni told the conference. Meloni also said that the current stalemate in the Ukraine conflict, brought about partly by the decision by the Western world to support Kyiv, was a precondition for peace talks. She also called for further solidarity with Ukraine amid mediation attempts by countries like China and India. I believe China and India have a role to play to resolve the conflict. The only thing that cannot happen is to think that the conflict can be solved by abandoning Ukraine, she said.